We live in interesting times.
For the headlines.
Philippine National Police Chief Director General Oscar Albayalde expressed security concerns over the massive passport data breach at the Department of Foreign Affairs, saying it also poses a threat to the country's security.
The cockpit voice recorder from an Indonesian Lion Air jet that crashed in October has been recovered.
A Boeing 707 military cargo plane crashed in bad weather west of the Iranian capital, killing 15 out of the 16 people on board.
And Turkey vows to continue fighting a U.S.-backed Kurdish militia, which it views as a terrorist group, after Donald Trump warns of economic devastation if Ankara attacks Kurdish forces when American troops withdraw.
I'm Alma Angeles, wherever you're watching from around the world. Thank you very much for joining us.
We welcome our viewers here in the Philippines and around the world. Good evening, everyone. I'm Sam Cepeda.
And now to the news. Malacanang on Monday described as cumbersome the ongoing practice of the Department of Foreign Affairs to require applicants renewing their passports to bring their original birth certificates following the agency's declaration it lost passport data to its old contractor. Presidential spokesperson Salvador Panelo made this remark as the DFA vowed to address its passport data loss after a previously outsourced printer allegedly took off with passport holders' documents when its contract was terminated. Panelo said that the submission of the old or current passport, which the applicant seeks to renew, should suffice for the purpose.
So, definitely, we will not allow any delay on the issues of passports or putting stringent requirements that will burden our people into getting their passports.
Panelo described the passport data breach as a serious and grave matter and assured that the National Privacy Commission is determining whether there were any violations to the Data Privacy Act.
After the Philippines' top diplomat alleged that the passport printer stole people's personal data from the Department of Foreign Affairs, no less than the country's top police officers said today that the case is a national security threat.
Ang problema lang naman kasi dito, wala pa nga tayong initial na coordination with DFA or DFA coming from sa atin. It probably baka rini-resolve nila on their level. So hindi natin alam. So ayaw pa natin makiisaw-saw dyan. Not until the DFA will ask for our assistance dito. So we are very much willing to assist the DFA dito.
Meanwhile, 4 persons were killed, 25 others were arrested during the first day of implementation of the COMELEC gun ban, which has been implemented as part of the security measures for the May elections. Take a look.
Para maiwasan yung mga pagdadala, yung pinagbabawal, kagaya ng firearms, because effective today, ay meron tayong gun ban. Ito yung mga dahilan kung bakit nagkakaroon ng mga sakitan, mga casualties, lalong-lalo sa ating mga kandidato.
The gun ban implementation started at 12:01 of January 13 and it will end on June 12. During the nationwide gun ban, carrying of firearms and explosives outside a residence is prohibited, while processing of licenses for gun owners is also suspended. Only the on-duty policemen, soldiers, and other law enforcers are exempted from the gun ban, which seeks to prevent unlawful elements such as private armed groups and gun-for-hire groups from intimidating, injuring, or killing anyone during the election season. Through the conduct of checkpoints, the PNP seeks to intercept guns, explosives, and other instruments of violence. In the autonomous region of Muslim Mindanao, meanwhile, where a forthcoming plebiscite before the Bangsamoro Organic Law will be held before the May 2019 elections, the PNP conducted 518 checkpoint operations, in addition to the 8 more joint checkpoints with the Armed Forces of the Philippines.
The cockpit voice recorder from an Indonesian Lion Air jet that crashed in October has been recovered, officials said. A discovery that could be critical to explaining why a brand new plane fell out of the sky just after takeoff. The Boeing 737 MAX vanished from radar about 13 minutes after departing Jakarta, slamming into the Java Sea moments after pilots had asked to return to the capital and killing all 189 people on board. The bright orange voice recorder was discovered early Monday about 10 meters from a flight data recorder that was pinpointed back in November, authorities said. More human remains were also found near the voice recorder. A preliminary crash report from Indonesia's Transport Safety Agency suggested that pilots of Flight 610 struggled to control the plane's anti-stalling system just before the accident. It also found that the Lion Air jet should have been grounded over a recurrent technical problem before its fatal journey, as it criticized the budget carrier's poor safety culture. But it did not pinpoint a definitive cause of the crash, and a final report is not likely to come before later this year.
A Boeing 707 military cargo plane crashed in bad weather on Monday west of the Iranian capital, killing 15 out of the 16 people on board, according to the Iranian army. Take a look. The Iranian army said only one person, a flight engineer of the 16 people on board, was found alive and taken to hospital. The plane's black box voice recorder has been found at the crash site. An army spokesman confirmed to State TV that the plane belonged to Iran and that all those on board were Iranian citizens. Fat Airport belongs to Iran's elite Revolutionary Guards Corps and is located in the central Iranian province of Alborz. The cargo aircraft was transporting meat from the Kyrgyz capital Bishkek. Its wreckage was found near houses between Fat and another airport, Payam International Airport.
در فرودگاه فتح استان البرز دچار حادثه شد. هواپیما از مبدأ
The Department of Foreign Affairs said no Filipinos were among the victims of the explosion at a bakery in Paris. The Philippine Embassy in Paris said it was informed by the French Ministry of Foreign Affairs that none of the fatalities or the around 50 who were injured in the explosion was from the Philippines. There are around 25,000 Filipinos in France, majority of them in Paris. Charge d'Affaires Eileen Mendiona said the explosion at the bakery along Rue du Trevi was believed to have been caused by a gas leak. Meanwhile, the Paris Fire Department said rescuers have found a woman's body under the rubble of the bakery, bringing the overall death toll to 4. Paris Fire Department spokesman Eric Moulin told reporters Sunday that 9 people were still in critical condition from the explosion that devastated the Paris street, and 45 others also injured but not as seriously.
Meanwhile, French President Emmanuel Macron spelled out the questions underpinning his great national debate, a public consultation aiming to quell yellow vest anger after nearly 2 months of sometimes violent protests. Now, Macron made his appeal in a letter to the French released on Sunday, following the 9th consecutive Saturday of nationwide yellow vest rallies, which saw an uptick in turnout. in turnout. "I intend to transform anger into solutions," he said in the letter, which had been due to be published on Monday, but was released by his office late Sunday. "Your proposals will help build a new contract for the nation, organizing the actions of the government and parliament, but also France's positions at the European and international levels," he said. Now, the protests have become the biggest crisis of Macron's presidency, and he hopes that returning to the more participative democracy he promised in his 2017 grassroots campaign will satisfy the protesters' demands for a greater say in the running of the country, amid accusations that he is too aloof and his policies favor the wealthy. Macron said the debates are, quote, "neither an election nor a referendum," and would revolve around 35 questions on issues such as taxation, democracy, the environment, and immigration.
In Paris, more than 100 people are arrested in the 9th act of the mobilization of the Yellow Vests. In Place de la Cour, some protesters defy the police, who make heavy use of water cannons and tear gas grenades. The Yellow Vest movement is now in its 9th straight week of protests, have at times turned violent, caused economic upheaval, and called on the president to resign. The Yellow Vest movement started in mid-November over a rise in fuel tax. Macron since scrapped the duty and promised wage rises and tax relief for low earners, but the protests have spiraled into a revolt over living standards. One sticking point at the heart of the Yellow Vests' demands is a call for the ISF fortune tax to be replaced. It was previously levied on high earners, but looks unlikely to be changed, as Macron wrote in his letter to the protesters, and I quote, "We will not pursue tax cuts without lowering the overall level of our public spending."
Angry protesters barricaded roads with burning tires and rocks in Zimbabwe on Monday after the government more than doubled the price of fuel in a bid to improve supplies as the country battles its worst gasoline shortages in a decade. In a televised address late on Saturday, President Mnangagwa said prices of petrol and diesel would more than double to tackle a shortfall caused by increased fuel usage and rampant illegal trading. Take a look.
Government is aware of attempts by certain elements bent on taking advantage of the current fuel shortages to cause and sponsor an unrest and instability in the country. Such politically motivated activities will not be tolerated. To curb continued misuse of fuel in the country, government, through relevant departments, which include its security structures, have started on a comprehensive audit of all fuel drawn downs with a view to establishing points of leakages with effect from midnight to night. A fuel pump price of $3.11 per liter for diesel and $3.31 per liter for petrol will come into effect.
The government claims fuel prices were lower than in other regional countries, saying some foreigners were taking advantage and buying fuel in bulk for resale elsewhere. Mnangagwa said the new measures were aimed at curbing a burgeoning speculative parallel market in which fuel was being sold at 5 times the official price. Protesters turned back drivers and blocked buses from carrying passengers in Zimbabwe's 2 main cities of Harare and Bulawayo. The main labor federation called for a 3-day nationwide strike. Soldiers were deployed at a shopping center in Bulawayo's township of Entumbane, where protesters looted shops. Demonstrators in the second city had attacked minibuses heading to the city center.
President Donald Trump warns Turkey of economic devastation if it attacks Kurdish forces in the wake of the U.S. troop pullout from Syria, while also urging the Kurds not to provoke Ankara. Trump took to Twitter to reveal some of his latest thoughts in the slow drip of information being released by the administration after his shocking December announcement of the troop withdrawal. Will devastate Turkey economically if they hit Kurds, Trump tweeted, while pushing for the creation of a 20-mile, or that's a 30-kilometer safe zone. Likewise, do not want the Kurds to provoke Turkey. U.S.-led operations against ISIS in Syria have been spearheaded on the ground by the Kurdish-dominated Syrian Democratic Forces, or SDF. Ankara sees the backbone of the alliance, the Kurdish People's Protection Units, or YPG, as a terrorist group linked to the Kurdistan Workers' Party, or PKK, which has fought a decades-long insurgency against the Turkish state.
Meanwhile, Turkey on Monday hit back and vowed to continue fighting a U.S.-backed Kurdish militia, which it views as a terrorist group, after President Trump warned of economic devastation if Ankara attacks Kurdish forces as American troops withdraw. Now, Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan's spokesman Ibrahim Kalin said on Twitter that there was no difference between the Islamic State extremist group and the Kurdish People's Protection Units, or YPG militia. We will continue to fight against them, he said. Turkey's response came after Trump on Sunday warned on Twitter, "We will devastate Turkey," or U.S. will devastate Turkey economically if they hit Kurds. President Tayyip Erdogan's spokesman says Turkey expects the United States to honor their strategic partnership. Turkey views the YPG as a terrorist offshoot of the outlawed Kurdistan Workers' Party, or PKK, which has been waging an insurgency against the Turkish state since 1984. The PKK is blacklisted as a terrorist organization by Ankara, the United States, and the European Union. But Washington has been working closely in recent years with the YPG, providing military support and training in the fight against ISIS in Syria. American support to the YPG has been one of the main sources of tension between Turkey and the United States.
Northeast Syria is seeing increasing numbers of civilian casualties and large-scale displacement amid intensifying efforts to defeat ISIS extremists in Deir ez-Zor governorate, the UN refugee agency UNHCR said on Friday. Spokesperson Andrei Bakechits warned that clashes and airstrikes in Hajin have forced tens of thousands of people to flee northwards in search of safety.
It is estimated right now that some 2,000 people remain in the conflict-affected area of Hajin. Those fleeing report increasingly desperate conditions with diminishing services and extremely high prices of basic foods. We are worried for civilians who continue to be trapped in ISIS-held areas. This is still going on, and people are still arriving daily through the desert, trying to move through the different checkpoints and reach safety in the camps and other areas outside the conflict zone. Over the past 6 months, more than 25,000 people have been displaced in that part of the country. In the 5 weeks alone, 8,000 plus. So we have seen an increase, especially with the escalation that has occurred in the course of December. People coming out of the conflict zone do also have wounds that have been inflicted. We also know that from the stories of the displaced, that many of them tell us that they have been targeted while they were fleeing.
Those at risk include women, children, and the elderly, and many families who have reached the safety of Al-Hol refugee camp in northeast Syria have risked their lives to do so. The dangerous and difficult journey and conditions inside the enclave are reported to have led to the deaths of 6 babies under 12 months old. Most died after arriving at Al-Hol, too weak to survive, according to UNHCR. A UN agency estimates that 2,000 people remain in the conflict-affected area of Hajin, where people report increasingly desperate conditions in ISIL-held areas.
To other news now, U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo arrived in Qatar, pushing for an end to a diplomatic rift between Washington's Gulf allies on the latest leg of his Middle East tour. The top U.S. diplomat's visit to the small, energy-rich Gulf state comes amid a more than 18-month-old dispute pitting Riyadh and its allies against Doha. Take a look.
We're all more powerful when we're working together, when disputes are limited, and when we have common challenges in the region and around the world. Disputes between countries that have a shared objective are never helpful. They never permit you to have as robust and powerful a response to common adversaries or common challenges.
Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Bahrain, and Egypt, all U.S. allies, cut ties with Qatar in June of 2017, accusing it of supporting terrorist groups and seeking closer ties to Saudi arch-rival Iran. Qatar, also a U.S. ally, denies the allegations and accuses the countries of seeking regime change. Washington, which at first appeared to back the boycott, has so far been unsuccessful in trying to get the countries to set aside their differences in order to focus on Washington's regional priority, the fight against Iran. Qatar's relationship with Iran is complicated as it shares the world's largest natural gas field with Tehran. Gas has been responsible for transforming Qatar into one of the richest countries in the world since it first began exporting liquefied natural gas little more than 20 years ago. It also has agreed to increase gas production since the beginning of the crisis.
U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo faces a tough balancing act on Monday as he presses Saudi Arabia's Crown Prince over critic Jamal Khashoggi's murder while shoring up strategic ties with Riyadh. The top U.S. diplomat, on an extensive Middle East tour, held talks with King Salman and his son, Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, who faces international opprobrium over the journalist's murder inside the Saudi consulate in Istanbul. Pompeo walks a diplomatic tightrope on his second politically sensitive visit to Saudi Arabia since the killing, amid pressure from American lawmakers for a tough response. After landing in Riyadh on Sunday evening, Pompeo pushed for Saudi Arabia to continue its investigation into the murder in talks with Adel Al-Jubeir, Minister of State for Foreign Affairs, and the Saudi ambassador to Washington, Prince Khalid bin Salman.
We will continue to have a conversation with the Crown Prince and the Saudis about ensuring that the accountability is full and complete with respect to the unacceptable murder of Jamal Khashoggi. So we'll continue to talk about that and make sure we have all the facts so that they are held accountable, certainly by the Saudis, but by the United States as well.
Khashoggi, a Washington Post contributor, was murdered on October 2 in what Saudi Arabia called a rogue operation, tipping the kingdom into one of its worst diplomatic crises and subsequently straining ties between Riyadh and Washington.
To other news now, Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov met Japanese Foreign Minister Taro Kono amid increasing tensions around the disputed Kuril Islands. Take a look. A decades-long row over the islands lingers as Moscow and Tokyo never signed a peace treaty after World War II due to the territorial dispute over the islands invaded by the Soviet Union in the final days of the war. The visit comes after Russia accused Japan this week of whipping up tensions before an expected meeting between President Vladimir Putin and Prime Minister Shinzo Abe. Russian Foreign Ministry spokeswoman Maria Zakharova blamed Japanese media for playing a significant role in creating a strange information atmosphere that precedes the beginning of a negotiation process. On Wednesday, the Russian Foreign Ministry said it had summoned Japanese Ambassador Toyohisa Kozuki and told him it viewed recent statements by Tokyo as an attempt to artificially stir up the atmosphere over the issue of the peace treaty. Russia said Russia's position on the Kuril Islands remains unchanged and Japan must accept the outcome of World War II, including Russia's sovereignty over the disputed islands. Now, Moscow's angry statement came 5 days after Abe's New Year press conference, in which he spoke of the need to help Russian residents of the disputed islands accept and understand that the sovereignty of their homes will change. The Japanese Prime Minister said the residents' lives will improve by living alongside Japanese people and vowed to step up peace talks with Russia in 2019, saying he intends to visit Russia late this month. Putin and Abe last met in November and agreed to accelerate talks to formally end World War II hostilities, taking a 1956 joint declaration as their starting point. The Russian-held islands of Hokkaido were seized by the former Soviet Union from Japan at the end of the war. The long-standing territorial dispute has prevented Tokyo and Moscow from concluding a peace treaty to formally end their wartime hostilities. And Russia calls the islands the Kurils, and Japan calls them its northern territories.
More news will be coming your way when Eagle News International returns.
Huli na MTRCB ang mag-provide na appropriate ratings sa lahat ng TV shows. Para ugaliin ng pamilya ang responsableng panonood. Teamwork na ng parents. Rated G, good for all. Oops, rated PG. Dapat may mga magulang para sagutin ang mga tanong ng kabataan. Grabe, rated SPG, maselan!
Itan ang paggabay.
Pag rated MTRCB, rated responsable.
Subaybayan ang mas pinalakashang Saganang Mamamayan. Lunes hanggang Biyernes, alas 8 hanggang alas 9 ng umaga.
Agila Balita, Lunes hanggang Biyernes, alas 7:30 hanggang alas 8 ng umaga.
Prime Minister Theresa May ramped up warnings to MPs poised to reject her EU divorce deal that failing to deliver Brexit would be catastrophic for British democracy. On the eve of Tuesday's monumental vote in Parliament on her withdrawal agreement, forged from 18 months of grueling negotiations with the European leaders, May addressed factory workers in Stoke, a Brexit-backing city in central England. The embattled leader, who is widely expected to lose the House of Commons vote by a wide margin, will make a final bid for support by warning Brexit-supporting MPs that they risk sabotaging the whole process and reminding EU supporters of their democratic responsibilities.
Tomorrow, members of Parliament will cast their votes on the withdrawal agreement on the terms of our departure from the European Union and the political declaration on our future relationship. That vote in Westminster is a direct consequence of the votes that were cast by people here in Stoke and in cities, towns and villages in every corner of the United Kingdom. Yet, as we've seen over the last few weeks, there are some in Westminster who would wish to delay or even stop Brexit and who will use every device available to them to do so. I ask them to consider the consequences of their actions on the faith of the British people in our democracy. The House of Commons did not say to the people of Scotland or Wales that despite voting in favour of the devolved legislature, Parliament knew better and would overrule them, or else force them to vote again. What if we found ourselves in a situation where Parliament tried to take the UK out of the EU in opposition to a Remain vote? People's faith in the democratic process and their politicians would suffer catastrophic harm. We all have a duty to implement the result of the referendum. Ever since I reached an agreement with the EU on a withdrawal agreement and declaration on our future relationship, I've argued that the consequences of Parliament rejecting it would be grave uncertainty, potentially leading to one of two outcomes. Either a no-deal Brexit that would cause turbulence for our economy, create barriers to security cooperation and disrupt people's daily lives, or the risk of no Brexit at all, for the first time in our history failing to implement the outcome of a statutory referendum and letting the British people down. These alternatives both remain in play if the deal is rejected. There are differing views on the threat that a no-deal exit poses. I've always believed that while we could ultimately make a success of no deal, it would cause significant disruption in the short term, and it would be far better to leave with a good deal. Others in the House of Commons take a different view and regard no deal as the ultimate threat to be avoided at all costs. To those people I say this: the only ways to guarantee we do not leave without a deal are to abandon Brexit, betraying the vote of the British people, or to leave with a deal, and the only deal on the table is the one MPs will vote on tomorrow night. You can take no deal off the table by voting for that deal. And if no deal is as bad as you believe it is, it will be the height of recklessness to do anything else. But while no deal remains a serious risk, having observed events at Westminster over the last 7 days, it's now my judgment that the more likely outcome is a paralysis in Parliament that risks there being no Brexit. That makes it even more important that MPs consider very carefully how they will vote tomorrow night. As I've said many times, the deal we have agreed is worthy of support for what it achieves for the British people. Immigration policy back in the hands of people you elect, so we can build a system based around the skills people have to offer this country, not where they come from, and bring the overall numbers down. Sovereign control of our borders. Decisions about how to spend the money you pay in taxes back under the control of people you elect, so we can spend the vast annual sums we send to Brussels as we choose on priorities like our long-term plan for the NHS. Sovereign control of our money. UK laws, not EU laws, governing this country, so the people you elect decide what the law of the land in our country is. Sovereign control of our laws. Out of the common agricultural policy, with our farmers supported by schemes we designed to suit our own needs. Out of the common fisheries policy, so we decide who fishes in our waters and we can rebuild our fishing fleets for the future. Retaking our seat at the World Trade Organization, so we can strike trade deals around the world that work for British businesses and consumers. The rights of valued EU citizens here guaranteed, and reciprocal guarantees for UK citizens across Europe. The partnerships between our police forces and security services that protect us every day from threats that know no borders, sustained. An implementation period that ensures our departure from the EU is smooth and orderly, protecting your jobs. And yes, a guarantee that the people of Northern Ireland can carry on living their lives just as they do now, whatever the future holds.
China's trade surplus with the United States widened last year, according to data while the country's imports and exports fell in December as the long-running trade war begins to bite in the world's #2 economy. The surplus with the U.S. is a major source of anger within the Trump administration, which imposed tariffs on hundreds of billions of dollars worth of Chinese goods last year and has warned of more to come. Despite the levies, exports to the United States grew 11.3% last year, while imports rose 0.7%, expanding the surplus to $323.3 billion from $275.8 billion in 2017, according to a customs data. However, in a sign that the White House's measures are having an impact, China's exports to the U.S. sank last month. The figures come after a U.S. delegation held 3 days of talks in Beijing last week, in the first face-to-face meeting since President Trump and Chinese leader President Xi Jinping in December pledged a 90-day truce to resolve the crisis. Trump wants Beijing to buy more American goods to narrow the yawning trade gap and allow foreign players better access and protection in the Chinese market. Traditionally, China imports vast quantities of American soybeans in the second half of the year, long making it the most valuable import from the U.S.
Why was Billhead there?
The auto industry gathers in Detroit on the eve of the last winter edition of North America's premier auto show as car makers grapple with a contracting market and uncertainty in the year ahead. American, Asian, and European automakers will try to ramp up the excitement, showcasing their latest offerings at the event starting next week at the massive Cobo Convention Center in downtown Detroit. But several major brands were skipping the show altogether, while others were reducing their presence, something unheard of its years past, when the event was impossible to miss. And analysts said they expect few headline-grabbing announcements.
Our primary objective is obviously the cars are the stars in the show, and people still do want to be able to see them side by side and compare. But the days of just a static display where nothing moves, those are gone. Warmer weather, ride and drives, hill climbs maybe, all sorts of kind of exhibitions, dynamic opportunities for people to be in and out of the cars, ride in them, for the manufacturers to show what they couldn't previously do inside.
But I think it's kind of emblematic of where the industry is. We're in a transition in the industry. We've had a great run of strong car sales over the last decade or so. We're probably going to have a dip in the next couple of years. At the same time, the auto companies have to focus on today's business to generate profits so they can finance a future that's going to be very different.
Not only are American car makers reducing their footprint at the show, major German manufacturers, with the exception of Volkswagen, will be completely absent. The show has been losing a battle with a far bigger and more enticing conference held in Las Vegas in January, the Consumer Electronics Show, where car makers have been making important announcements in recent years. Rising prices for steel and aluminum, a consequence of steep tariffs the United States has imposed on major trading partners, are squeezing bottom lines.
So it's going to make for a very interesting year with potential ups and downs to sales, because if there is a real tariff with a deadline, then there's going to be a massive rush of people to buy ahead of that deadline being applied. But then, of course, there'll be negotiations with countries to hopefully avoid that tariff actually being applied to any vehicles.
Meanwhile, GM kicks off a string of new unveilings at the Detroit Auto Show by debuting its new Cadillac XT6, a mid-size crossover in line with similar SUVs from competing luxury car makers. Take a look.
But Cadillac being a leader in technology and innovation, it's very important that as we take it to the next level, we lead with Cadillac.
Cadillac intends to set the pace, much as we have for most of our 116 years. and we have the support and the engineering might of General Motors behind us.
Unlike the popular Cadillac Escalade, which is based on GM's large pickup truck architecture, XT6 offers a more car-like experience aimed more at a suburban mom, but with plenty of space, capability, and luxury. GM recently announced that due to weak sales, it will discontinue its rear-wheel drive Cadillac CT6 sedan, which had only been on sale for 2 model years. Cadillac has been fighting its way back to competitive status against German brands and Toyota's Lexus brand, which dominate the luxury field in the U.S.
To the levels that befit the Cadillac name.
In a letter to Human Rights Watch, the wife of ex-Nissan chief Carlos Ghosn alleges her husband is being held in harsh conditions and subjected to round-the-clock interrogations intended to extract a confession. In a letter to Human Rights Watch, Carol Ghosn urged the group to highlight the case of her husband, who has been in detention in Japan since his shock arrest on November 19 and faces 3 charges of financial misconduct. The 9-page letter says the former high-flying executive is held in cell that is lit even at night and is denied his daily medication. For hours each day, the prosecutors interrogate him, browbeat him, lecture him, and berate him outside the presence of his lawyers in an effort to extract a confession, the letter says. It claims prosecutors have pressed Ghosn to sign documents in Japanese, which he does not understand, providing only an oral translation and without his lawyer present. A court ruling last week means Ghosn can now begin receiving family visits. His lead lawyer, Motonari Otsuru, also denied last week that Ghosn was being pressured to sign documents or a confession in Japanese. Not once has Mr. Ghosn said to U.S. he has any concerns about being asked to sign something in a language he doesn't understand, he told reporters. He also said Ghosn had now been moved to a larger cell with a Western-style bed, adding that his client had not complained to him about the conditions of his detention. Ghosn faces charges of underreporting his compensation, trying to shift personal losses onto Nissan books, and using company funds to repay a friend. He denies wrongdoing and in a first court appearance this week said he had been wrongly accused and unfairly detained.
Now, for a lucky few, it's the gift that keeps on giving. A Cathay Pacific snafu offering premium tickets at a fraction of their value for the second time in less than 2 weeks. Take a look. On its website Sunday morning, Cathay was offering first-class flights from Lisbon to Hong Kong via a connecting flight through London with a partner airline for just $1,512, according to the South China Morning Post. A similar journey in first class via Frankfurt, meanwhile, would set travelers back an eye-watering $16,000. The Hong Kong-based carrier will honor the cheap fares for the very small number of savvy and fortunate travelers, the spokesperson added, as it did last time. Airline and travel blogs went into overdrive on New Year's Eve after eagle-eyed shoppers noticed the carrier was offering first and business class tickets on its website from Vietnam to the United States and Canada for as little as $670. Now, that represented a staggering discount from the usual $16,000 round-trip flight on first class and a $4,000 to $6,000 on business class. Eagle News International will be right back. Stay tuned.
How will we keep the prices down?
Pero baka matulungan niyo ako dito. May kaibigan ako taga-Kapitolyo. Baka kilala niyo ho?
many as 1 million fish are believed to have died along the banks of a major river system in drought-battered eastern Australia, and the authorities warned of more deaths to come. The banks of the Murray-Darling rivers are thick with rotten fish, with officials putting the number of dead at hundreds of thousands and saying the toll is likely closer to 1 million. Further high temperatures forecast for this week could make the situation worse, the New South Wales government has warned. Low water conditions and the heat may also have encouraged an algae bloom that starves the fish of oxygen and produce toxins. Prime Minister Scott Morrison's government has blamed the fish deaths on drought and defended policies which some locals say has caused the systemic depletion and pollution of the river system.
It's a devastating ecological event, and I think particularly for those who live all throughout that region, just the sheer visual image of this is just terribly upsetting. There's a drought, and this is one of the consequences of drought. There are many, and my focus on drought has not shifted 1 inch. The Murray-Darling Basin Plan is a bipartisan plan, and I'm concerned today that some might want to play politics with that. There was reports done by scientists under Labor's contribution to that plan back in 2012. The plan has been operating in accordance with that advice, and so we just need to keep on and working the issue.
It was due to a lack of oxygen in the wrecks and a lack of flows.
Thailand is set to deploy rain-making planes to seed clouds in an effort to tackle the pall of pollution that has shrouded the capital in recent weeks. The weather modification technique involves dispersing chemicals into the air to aid cloud condensation, which should, in theory, result in rain. As Thais woke up Monday morning to another day of murky air blanketing its bustling, construction-filled capital, environment group Greenpeace said Bangkok was currently the 10th most polluted in the world, rivaling some cities in China. Reasons for the persistent smog include combustion exhaust from Bangkok's traffic-strewn roads, the burning of fields from farmers outside the city, and pollutants from factories. But the pollution department played down the dangers of the persistent haze, which the government judges using a different set of measurements to see the concentration of harmful microscopic particles known as PM 2.5. But Greenpeace's Thailand director Tara Buakamsiri said immediate action should be taken by the authorities, like reducing the number of cars and closing schools in high-risk areas.
Using the water gun to spray water into the sky, hoping that the level of air pollution will be decreased. I think they are wrong, because it proved in China and India and anywhere else this is not a solution. Public transport in Bangkok has been quite challenging because of it's expensive. People cannot afford, so government need to think how Thailand or Bangkok building a smarter, affordable public transport system.
Here's Ben Bernaldez for our sports news.
In basketball, Barangay Ginebra take their first win of the new PBA season after overwhelming TNT Catropa 90-79 on Sunday in the Philippine Cup opener at the Philippine Arena in Ciudad Victoria. Favored as the best team that could best challenge San Miguel Beer in its all-Filipino 5-pit bid, the Kings played to expectation and dominated a TNT handicap by injuries to Troy Rosario and Yusef Taha. It was a complete domination except for a good run that the Texans were able to unleash in the third quarter. Greg Slaughter, Japet Aguilar, Aljon Mariano, L.A. Tenorio, and Scotty Thompson formed the starting unit that got the team storming out of the starting gate, and the Kings held on to the lead all the way to the finish. Slaughter and Aguilar were even in the bench, even the Kings put the game away for good in the fourth quarter. The Kings lead was cut to 2 points, 59-57, but they scored 4 straight points to finish the third quarter. Ginebra increased its lead after opening the fourth with an 18-9 run to grab an 81-66 lead. Aguilar had 21 points, while Slaughter added 15 points and 7 rebounds for the Kings, who led by as many as 18 points in the contest.
Trying to keep my focus kanina sa game. Tapos helping the team in each way I can. So, yun.
R.R. Pogoy had 21 points and 16 rebounds as Jason Castro had 17 points and 10 assists in a losing cause for the Katropa. Brian Heruela had 14 points in his TNT debut after being one of the players involved in the Romeo trade. Meanwhile, with over 23,700 in attendance, the Barangay Ginebra wins their first game against the TNT Katropa 90-79 in the opening of PBA 44th season at the Philippine Arena. Always thrilled to play at the Philippine Arena, Coach Tim Cone expressed how difficult it was playing on opening day. Coach Tim Cone added it is always great playing at the world's largest indoor arena in the world.
You know, the opening game is always tough, and when you play the opener, because it is a long day. Your guys are standing around a lot, and it's hard to you can oftentimes start lethargic, and we're not in great shape as we are. I mean, we've got real good talent. We know what we want to do, and that's great. But sometimes we get tired. Yeah, like I said, the lounges are great. I think that was one of the best things about playing the opening game in Philippine Arena. Is that the players were able to take advantage of the locker room and the lounges. They have sofas and couches, and they can sit down, lay down, whatever they want to do. And so I don't think it was as trying here as it was in some of the other arenas when their locker room was really small and you're cramped in there for 2 or 3 hours, 4 hours. But they had a lot of space in the lounge. So I like that point of view. I like the idea that we can talk to the players in the game. We have had success here. And it's especially nice to play here when it's a Sunday. It's harder when it's a Friday or a Wednesday, but on Sunday, it's, getting up here is fairly easy. It's really, in terms of the facilities, it's very professional. That's what I like about it. Just that the crowd is so far back and spread out. But when you get, we had 54,000, 640 people or something like that. That was amazing. That was amazing. That's unforgettable. That's a once-in-a-lifetime experience.
Coach Tim also praised his rookie player Tay-Tay Teodoro, who draws comparison to Johnny Abarrientos and Willie Miller.
Tay, I love Tay. I think he's greatly skilled. I think that he has a presence about him that he plays with. He doesn't get rattled. Nothing overcomes him, and that you see that right away. He plays with a kind of a Johnny Abarrientos type personality where just nothing rattles him. He's prepared for anything, and you can throw anything at him and he'll be ready.
Meanwhile, rookie Tay-Tay Teodoro admitted there is pressure in being a Ginebra King, especially after its decorated coach Tim Cone spoke highly of him.
Medyo may pressure kasi siyempre nag-expect siya sa akin ng magandang laro. So ngayon buti kahit papaano yung nabigyan ko sila ng quality minutes kahit papaano. So happy ako for it.
Meanwhile, these are the results of the games today in the NBA. And these are the stories for EN Sports. I'm Ben Bernaldez, and I'm 1 with 25.
And finally in our news, ever thought of redecorating a part of your house but never got to actually doing it? Well, today our ABC correspondent in Texas, Nenita Manawis, shares tips to create a few fast do-it-yourself accents to spice up that home corner of yours. Take a look.
Personal touches are what makes a home your place. And today we're going to give you an idea on how to create a photo wall to display your family memories. We're also going to give you an example of a quick and easy transformation and reuse. I wanted to personalize a corner in my landing area, and I thought of creating a photo wall. If you already have a collection of photo frames and printed pictures, strips for hanging and push pins, then this project might not even cost you anything. Try to arrange the pictures as you envision them on your photo wall. You can position the pushpins on the wall first and rearrange if needed later, or you can also do it as you go along, hanging the pictures on the wall. Next project is the guest room. I wanted to fill up the room but reusing what I already have. So for the bedside table, I thought of adding some color to a small foldable table that I hardly use nowadays. This project is quick and easy, and the materials you would need depend on the look you want to have. For this project, I used a spray paint and wood stain, which were leftover materials from my previous projects. There are many things that you can do to refresh your home without blowing your budget, and nothing beats incorporating your own personal touches. This is Nanita Manawes reporting from Dallas, Texas, your EBC correspondent, 1 week 25.
Don't forget to like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter and Tumblr. Also check out our boards and Pinterest and pictures on Instagram. I'm Sam Cepeda. Thanks for joining us.
And that's it for tonight's broadcast. I'm Alma Angeles, and
we're one with 25.